Слава Україні! Слава нації! Україна! 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 Героям України тричі! Thank you for coming here today, my friends. We will start this rally like this. We're still waiting for the... Oh, there it is. There it is. Maybe I should have waited for it. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. We'll start it beforehand. Thank you very much to all of you for showing up here today. It's very important that we continue to remind the world about what's going on in Ukraine. Unfortunately, some people have forgotten about how important it is for every single one of us to speak to the whole world and for everybody to remember what's going on in Ukraine right now. The war in Ukraine is not being waged only in Ukraine. This is a global war against the terrorist regimes of Russia, of Iran, and of North Korea. These countries have proxies all over the world. Not just the Wagner Group, not just the Houthis, not just Hamas, but many others. Many other groups are the proxies of Russia and Iran, and they will continue to do so. They will continue to wage war against the free world until they are stopped. That is why we are here today, my friends. That is what we have to remind everybody in the world. That this is not a war merely for the Ukrainian people. This is a war for the future of humanity, for the freedom of the free world.
Guys, can I just ask you memorial? Because we just hold up around so that we take pictures and stuff and maybe people
Yeah, guys, let's warm up like this so that this is visible from this area. That's right. We've been planting some flags here, which was no easy task, by the way. The earth was very hard. You know, it's difficult. The results are very lovely. The results are very nice. My friends, I think this would be a good moment to start with a minute of silence for all the people who have died, for all the people who have suffered, for all the people who are still dying and suffering in Ukraine and all over the world as victims of the Russian terrorist regime. Please, let us do a minute of silence. Thank you. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
We must not forget that the only way for this war to stop is for everything what's necessary to stop this war, to end this war once and for all. There are ignorant individuals who believe that appeasing Russia will result in the end of the war. My friends, to stop the victims from defending themselves does not end the war. It starts an extermination. And that is what the Russians will do to anybody who lays down their weapons and accepts their so-called Ruski Mir in their countries. To negotiate with Russia is to flirt with suicide. That is what happened to Prigozhin. That is what will happen to everybody who wants to negotiate with Russia and who thinks there is something to gain by trusting a terrorist regime like Russia. Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Help Ukraine protect peace.
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 We are very grateful to every little bit of help that is given to us. And yet, the many people of the world must not forget that this help is not charity. This help is not merely offering something to the Ukrainian people. This help is an investment in the future of mankind. To help Ukraine is to help yourself, is to help your own people in their future. Unless, of course, you want your people to become slaves and to serve in a way that people used to serve long ago. Russia brings forward a plan to return humanity to the past, to return humanity to their idea of a multipolar world. What does Russia mean by this idea of the multipolar world? It means that nobody will stop Russia in their genocides, in their exterminations of the people who are their neighbors. It means that nobody will get in their way. That is what Russia means, my friends. And that is what they will achieve if we do not stand together against them. World, wake up!
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 All together, we will win!
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 More sanctions on Russia!
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 Seize Russian assets!
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 Very fortunately, seizing Russian assets has stopped being a taboo. How can we play fair against somebody who refuses to play fair, who cheats left, right, and center? No, my friends, Russia needs to be punished, and they will be punished. Because if they will not, then the precedent will be as follows. Excuse me for that. It means that every single country that has nuclear weapons can do whatever they want. And if anybody does not agree with that, they better have nuclear weapons of their own, or else their voice counts for nothing. That is the precedent brought forth by the Russian terrorist regime. A precedent of nuclear saber rattling, a precedent of nuclear genocide, a precedent of ecocide, like they have done in Ukraine, in the delta of the Dnipro River. My friends, we cannot allow the Russians to continue doing as such. Thank you very much. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть москалям!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
I'm very grateful for the microphone here. Some of you might have noticed, I was kind of losing my voice a little bit by the end of that little speech. So thank you very much for this. And I hope everything is ready so that we can start this rally, as we always do, with the Ukrainian anthem, just in 2 minutes, So in these 2 minutes, my friends, I would like to thank you all for coming here. And I would like to remind every person who's here, who might not be a regular, that our rallies happen 3 times every week. On Wednesdays at 6 o'clock. On Fridays also at 6 o'clock. And on Sundays, as we are here today, at 3 o'clock. Please come and show your support. It's very important that we all do our part for the Ukrainian cause, so that Ukraine is able to win this war and finally stop it. Because the only way to stop this war is to stop the Russian terrorist regime, my friends. That is the only way we have to do it. So once again, thank you very much for coming here. Our rallies are always held here in 10 Downing Street. They last for about 2 hours. But of course, depending on your availability, just come here on whatever time you can around our rallies. And now, the Ukrainian anthem.
Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці, душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу. Що ми браття козацького роду.
Слава Україні! Слава нації! Україна! 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 Героям України тричі! Ворогам України тричі! Not long ago, I've had a certain conversation with somebody who I used to see as my friend, but alas, sometimes people show their true colors. Ames knows this conversation. She has seen it online, because the conversation was online in this case. This individual has brought forth an argument that I have heard in the past. He said many times that Russia was cheated, that Russia was in the right, that the West had promised to not expand to the East. But the problem is, when I asked him, which treaty did the West break? He could not name one. In fact, he backpedaled, but not enough to show that he understood that he was wrong. He said that what he actually meant, is that the West did not make a treaty, but it made a promise. Now, of course, the difference between the treaty and the promise is arbitrary at best. But my friends, let's face this allegation of the West supposedly wronging Russia. There was no treaty between the West and Russia to not expand to the East. Every country, every sovereign country, in fact, has the right to join NATO and to join the EU. The joining to these organizations is voluntary. Not a single country was forced to join NATO. Not a single country was forced to join the EU. Every single one of them has joined willingly. And they continue to stay within NATO and within the EU willingly. Russia, on the other hand, forces countries to join forces with them. In the Soviet Union, an organization part of which nobody except the Russians wanted to be part of, the Russians had forced every single other country, every single other ethnicity to be part of this colonial organization, of this genocidal country of the Soviet Union. This country that had started World War II on the same side as the Nazis and only switched sides when they were attacked later on. That is reality, my friends. And yet, funnily enough, Putin, who praises the Soviet Union, Putin, who shills for the Soviet Union and claims to fight against Nazis, will never mention that the Soviet Union had an alliance with the Nazis at the beginning of World War II. In fact, unlike this supposed friend of mine who could not name the treaty supposedly violated by the West, I can name this treaty. Every single one of us can. It's the Molotov-Ribbentrop Treaty between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. A treaty that they have signed before World War II. A treaty that entailed that Poland would be split in half. Half would go to Hitler, half would go to Stalin. And that's what they did. When the Germans invaded Danzig, the Soviets were invading the rest of Poland, the east side of the country. And yet nobody speaks about this. And these modern day socialist and communist parties claim to oppose Nazism. When back then, back in those days, when the Nazis were invading Poland, every single socialist and communist was supporting them. In fact, just so that my words are not taken out of context, every single socialist and communist was preaching non-intervention, was encouraging the whole world that that was not their fight, that was not their war. But of course, when the Nazis decided to invade the Soviet Union, they changed their tune very quickly. So a very uncomfortable question rises, my friends. Do socialist and communist parties in the West support what's best for the Western people? Or do they support what's best for the people who fill up their pockets with rubles? That is the question that each of us needs to answer, my friends. Because we need to see the world as it is, and not as we want to see it. And then we need to act so that the world becomes better, so that we move into the future and not into the past. A future of prosperity, of peace, and of respecting international treaties. Not a future of genocide like Russia envisions. Not a return to the old order, where the Soviets and the Nazis were exterminating people by the millions. That is not what we are going to return to, my friends. But what are lofty ideals worth if we cannot back them up? If when we are attacked, when we are under attack by the terrorist regimes in this world, when we can do nothing, what are all of those beautiful ideas worth then? No, my friends. We need to change our tactics. We need to face this threat head on. We cannot allow Russia, Iran, and North Korea, of all countries, to be dictating the course of history, to be taking initiative into their hands and reshaping the world and bringing back medieval witch hunts. Because of course, one of the main excuses that the Russian terrorist regime has used to attack Ukraine was that supposedly Ukraine is a satanic country. The denazification and denazification of Ukraine, the de-satanization of Ukraine was there to complete this. What kind of a modern day witch hunt is that, my friends? Do we really believe in religious extremists who claim that they attack another country because the other people are Satanists? That is what the Russians are saying. And you need not believe in our words. All you have to do is look it up for yourself. Look at the Russian propaganda machine. Look at they foam from their mouths and spit venom at the West and say that the decaying West is terrible. Well, my friends, they call the decaying West degenerate. And yet, not so long ago, there was a huge scandal in Russia where the multi-millionaires, their influencers, their stars, their actors and singers had this big decadent party where everybody was wearing diamonds on their underwear. Now, of course, the Russian regime could not allow this to go to the public because their soldiers started to protest. Their soldiers started to scream and shout, "Is this what we're dying for?" And the answer is yes. Yes, indeed, my Russian friends, this is what you are dying for. You're dying so that your leaders can fill up their pockets, so that your leaders can trash talk the West and then send their children to Oxford. That is what you're dying for. Never forget about that. The Ukrainian people have always wished friendship with Russia. We do not wish to fight Russia. Before this war started, all the way back in 2014, we saw the Russians as a brotherly people. We were betrayed. Because we relaxed, because we saw them as friendly, they used it against us. The Ukrainians had a huge arsenal of bombers, of tanks, of artillery left from the Soviet Union. An arsenal created in Ukraine by Ukrainian hands and Ukrainian materials. All of that was given up in order to achieve world peace. The Ukrainians gave up the third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world in the Budapest Memorandum. And what did the Russians do next? They attacked us when we had nothing to defend ourselves with. And that is exactly what they will always do when we leave our back unprotected for a nice clean backstab by a Kremlin knife. That, my friends, is what we must remember. We have to remember the past so that we do not commit the same mistakes we have committed back then. But we must not look so far into the past at all. All we have to do is look a few months prior to this moment, when Yevgeny Prigozhin decided to make a treaty with Putin. When he thought that he would be safe in Belarus, they could go there and he could live at peace. And then he would go to Africa to use his neo-colonial means to ransack that continent. He was wrong. When he was recruiting the far right in Russia, his plane was knocked down. You could say that Prigozhin fell out of the tallest window in the world. But I said that joke before, so. The truth of the matter is, that is exactly what will happen to every single leader, to every single person who wants to side with Russia, thinks they have something to gain by siding with Russia. And that is why, my friends, we need to be wiser than that. We need to be better than that. We must not trust the terrorist Russian regime. That is the only way for us to move into a better future. Instead of being taken for fools by the Muscovite expansionists. Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Stop Russia, stop the war. Peace.
Help Ukraine protect 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 peace.
I believe, my friends, soon we will have some lovely Ukrainian music as a little pause to this speech. But before that, one more time, my friends, let's say it together. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Thank you.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
І найкращим героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
For those of you who didn't understand the song that just played was very appropriate for today's rally because it talked about how much has Ukraine lost, how many lives have we lost, and how expensive the price we're paying for this brutal war that Russia is doing against us for so many years. We paid indeed a very high price in lives of our men, women and children, civilians and military. And that's why here today we made a little memorial. It's similar to the one that is currently displayed at Maidan, a temporary memorial to commemorate those defenders of Ukraine, those heroes who died defending their motherland, defending their loved ones, their families. Here it's a very small one. We have about 250, I think, flags here. But in Kiev, at Maidan, there are hundreds of thousands of flags at this point, including international flags of those from Foreign Legion, from other countries who fought for the right, who fought for Ukraine. There are mothers and widows coming to the memorial, crying, showing their respect. It's very symbolic and significant for us because we will remember, as the song says, every single soul, every single person, and we must remember those who died for Ukraine because they died for the right. They gave their lives for the right cause, for their motherland. They were forced to it by Russia, the most brutal, cruel enemy one could possibly imagine, and they gave their lives to defend Ukraine. Please, I invite everybody to come here, take pictures, spread the word that Ukraine is constantly experiencing loss, that we have thousands of casualties, that memorial at Maidan in here is expanding every day, and we need the world's support to help Ukraine. Help Ukraine protect peace!
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 And once again, I can't stress this enough, but please, while it's still light, come here, take pictures of our memorial. We've put at the front, we've put some pictures of Ukraine's heroes, of the ones who died. Like I said, there are hundreds of thousands of them at this point. There are those who were fighting since 2014. They are really brave. They are obviously heroes. Every single one of them. We will always remember, and we will never forgive and never forget. Here, if you look at the pictures, we have Roman Ratoshny, a hero of Ukraine. He was at Maidan when he was only a student. He was one of the few students back in 2014 who stood up against Russia already back then, who stood up against our corrupt politicians who wanted Ukraine to join union with Russia. And he was met with brutality and hostility. He was met with dictatorship and totalitarianism of Ukraine at the time. But Ukraine, unlike Russia, keeps fighting. And so did he. And obviously when the full-scale war commenced in Ukraine in 2022, Roman joined the army. He was one of the brightest souls. He was fighting for the right things. He was fighting for Kiev's restoration, for rebuilding, restructuring, for all the right causes. And this is just one young, innocent soul that died in this brutal war. There is our Da Vinci, the hero of Ukraine, whose funeral took place, I think, last year, and whom we deeply miss as one of the bravest commanders. He was the youngest hero of Ukraine. I think he got that award only 27 years old or 26. He was the bravest youngest hero of Ukraine. He was praised by the US as he created his unit, the Wolves of Da Vinci, which was considered one of the most effective units in the world at the time. They took at the time when Ukraine didn't even have any weapons, they took the Russian weapons and they used them against Russia. He developed insane strategies to take over Russians, and he died while evacuating civilians on the road to Bakhmut, defending civilians. We have other heroes here. We have Gennady Afanasyev, who was a student in Crimea, who was detained and captured in Russia, who spent several years in Russian captivity, undergoing inhumane tortures. He wrote a book, you can read it. It's Gennady Afanasiev's book about the tortures that he's experienced while being in Russian captivity, how they tried to break him. He was then released. He joined the army again in 2022, and he died. We're losing the best of the best, the bravest of the bravest. We have a man here who was just shot because he said Slava Ukraini. He was just shot for those words. This is an example of genocide against Ukraine. This is who Ukraine is losing, our bravest sons. And we will remember every single one of them. And like Azov said, we will avenge them. More weapons for Ukraine!
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 And like I always say, the reason Ukraine is asking for weapons is that because we are defending. We're not attacking anyone. We have been attacked since 2014 on our own territory. Russia is murdering our civilians, our children. They are committing acts of genocide against our entire population for about 10 years now, and for years of our history from before that. We need more weapons to defend ourselves, to defend our land, to take back what was taken, to take back Donetsk, Lugansk, Crimea, all the areas that Russia illegally took from us. Because this is our land, these are our people, and they never wanted to be with Russia. They support Ukraine and they want to be back with Ukraine. That's why we keep asking for weapons. Unfortunately, without the support of our Western allies, we cannot win this war. We really appreciate Great Britain's support. Rishi Sunak recently came to Kiev, and obviously everybody knows that Britain is providing Ukraine with a big package of help, including humanitarian aid and obviously finance towards weaponry as well, and drones, which we really need. But this is not enough. Unfortunately, we need more. We're asking for more because we need to win against the most cruel enemy, against the biggest supposedly army in the world, against the biggest country in the world. If you look at the map at the sizes of Ukraine and Russia, you will see what we're fighting against. And they're absolutely brutal. They have no principles. They're just killing, murdering, raping, attacking civilian infrastructure, causing terror. Again, this is why we're asking for more weapons. One of them is fighter jets. We really need more fighter jets to protect our land. Fighter jets for Ukraine!
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 And like I said, like I always say at all the rallies, we have obviously so many casualties, so many heroes who are dying, but we still have so many heroes who are still in Russian captivity. And I don't know what is worse, to die or to be in Russian captivity. Because again, Russians are using inhumane tactics to taunt our heroes, to break their spirits, to torture them physically and mentally. I've read some reports that one day, the heroes say, in Russian captivity is worth 10 years of your life because of the psychological and physical abuse that they're going through. They all undertake years of rehabilitation after experiencing the Russian torture chambers, and we need them home. We need to take care of them because they're our heroes. Recently there was a prisoner exchange and we got over 200 people back. But this is just a small fraction, unfortunately, among those who are still in Russian captivity. There are still hundreds, if not thousands, of people captured in Russia since 2014. There are people from Crimea, from Donetsk, from Lugansk. There are civilians, there are women, there are mothers who are waiting for their sons and daughters for years now. And we need our heroes back. Release prisoners of war!
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 And just to summarize, what we're asking for is not unreasonable. We are asking our foreign allies, we're asking the rest of the world to continue pressuring, obviously pressuring Russia to stop this brutal war. Therefore, we need more weapons, we need our prisoners released, our prisoners of war released from Russian captivity. We need our heroes back. We need more funds to rebuild Ukraine because Russia specifically targets our infrastructure, specifically targets our civilian houses, schools, hospitals, maternity hospitals, for God's sake. They're specifically targeting our energy providing system so that Ukrainians freeze to death in the winter because they know it's going to be difficult. They're specifically causing terror. That's why we continuously need, unfortunately, support and money, and we need to win this war. And we're asking for support. All together, we will win!
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 So please, once again, come to the front while it's still light, take some pictures, spread on your social media. Social media has power. It's important to continue reminding the world that Ukraine still needs support on a daily basis, that we still need help, that we still need weapons, that we still need monetary support and donations. So please continue spreading the word about the war in Ukraine, because every day we're suffering casualties, every single day. If at the end of the rally you want to take one of the flags, please do so. We're more than happy for you to take them home. If you make a small donation to support Ukraine who are organizing these rallies, the donation you can make at the tent just there. They spent a lot of money since 2014 on supporting our defenders. Right now they're buying many, I'm sure, important things, including warmers, warm clothes, socks, etc. for our defenders. In Ukraine currently it's -14, -15. I can't begin to imagine how terrible it must be for our defenders to be in those trenches. So please come to that tent, make donations, take a flag and spread the word. And now our friend Colombe, please come. She wanted to make a speech. And thank you so much. Merci à notre ami. Merci beaucoup.
Slava Ukraine!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Hi everyone, I was just asked to make to say a couple of words about what's happening in Ukraine, but more specifically not to speak to Ukrainians. You guys are already not only defending your country, defending democracy, rights, and then abroad, trying to raise awareness about it, but to the rest of the world. As you can hear from my accent, I'm neither English nor from Ukraine. I'm French, and I work across the world to gather activists, politicians, in order to stand for freedom, for democracy, for rights. And we are entering a mega election year. This year, most of the world will go to vote. And this year, a lot of politicians will be using Ukraine, will be using Russia in order to try to gather support. Maybe to stop donating, maybe to stop supporting financially with weapons and so on Ukraine. And that's why now is the moment where we need to stand together across the world with Ukrainians, us, the people of the world, in order not only to push our governments to do better, but to push them to give more, and as you heard, more fighter jets, more weapons, more financial support, but also more diplomatic sanctions, more economic sanctions on Russia, in order to ensure that it can't continue its war. We're standing in front of Rishi Sunak's home, and the UK has been a friend to Ukraine. It has supported Ukraine. But again, we need more. You heard it. We need more weapons. We need more money. We need more sanctions. And the UK should be doing better. It should be supporting Ukraine more. But more than this, at the United Nations, it should be leading the charge to boycott Russia, to kick Russia out of the Security Council, to ensure it can't push its agenda in the highest body in the world. The United Nations Security Council is supposed to protect our peace and security. And one of its key member states is aggressing another country. It's committing war crimes. You can just read it on those various sites. It's committing genocide. It's a threat to the world. It's killing thousands of people every single day. It's bombing areas of Ukraine. And yet, right now, we have Russia sitting in the Security Council, able to promote its agenda, able to have legitimacy when it's waging an unjust, illegal war on Ukraine. So to the UK government and every other government that is supporting democracy, rights and freedoms, we must do more, and we must pressure them to do more, to support Ukraine, but to get Russia out of the room, to ensure that Ukraine instead has a seat at the table when we're discussing peace and security, when we're discussing justice, because nothing less is acceptable. It is insane that you would have sessions in the United Nations discussing Ukraine with Russia having more of a say at the table than Ukraine. It is unacceptable. And you've heard it, the people of the world have a voice, have a choice. A lot of us are going to the polls this year. We have the European elections coming up. Ukraine wants to be a member of the European Union. Those elections are crucial in order to ensure that this can happen one day. It's crucial to ensure that we don't backtrack our support, that we stand with Ukraine in the next 4, 5, 10 years, however long it takes, in the next 6 months as we approach the 2 years mark of the war in Ukraine right now. For this, we, the people of the world, need to do more. Again, I'm French, I'm here in the UK, I'm safe, I'm lucky. I don't have anyone at risk in Ukraine. The very least I can do is to do more. And yes, you heard it, you can speak on social media, that's not very difficult, and it's the very least. You should attend those protests every Wednesday, Friday and Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. You should be donating at the donation table. But we need to do more politically to force our countries to support Ukraine and to end this war. And this means voting, but also making our voice heard and screaming loud enough for Rishi not to be able to ignore us. To ensure that not only does he stay a friend to Ukraine, but push other countries to do the same. To boycott Russia, to get Russia out, to show that the world will never accept anything. Because it was mentioned in the first speech, the UK is a very big home of Russian funds. It's a very big home for Russian oligarchs, for Russian money. We could be doing more to sanction it, and we should. And this is the very least we can do across the world. So again, I don't want to take too much of your time. I'm just here to support and to ask you to scream a bit at Rishi's home, because thank you for supporting Ukraine, but you can do more, and to ask him to boycott Russia. So when I ask you what you want, boycott Russia, you got it. And I ask you when you want it. Okay, so let's try this. And again, he might, it's Sunday, he might not be very active, so we need to do it loudly, okay? What do we want? Guys, he's not hearing you. Much louder than this. What do we want? Boycott Russia. When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
What?
When do we want it?
Stand with Ukraine! 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 The problem with imperialistic notions, the problem with totalitarian states, is that they have the tendency to rewrite the history and distort the history of the places that they capture and places over which they have a lot of influence. Did you know about the executed Renaissance, the so-called movement of executing the Ukrainian elites, creative people, and the greatest poets and writers and artists that were in Ukraine in the last century? When people tell me that Ukraine is not capable of doing good art, when people tell me that Russian culture is so much better than Ukrainian because Russians have something to show, I tell them that Ukraine does not have as much art as it should have because all of its artists have died. Most of its artists cannot right now exercise the right to make these arts. And when they do, they have to scream about the fact that they are being killed, that they have to survive this war before they are able to pick up it to the standard of the Great Britain or other European nations. This is a war that has already taken almost 2 years. I look at Europe, I look at the United Kingdom, and I love the fact that we have managed to reach this point in history where we are able to exercise such freedoms as we do now. But I'm also afraid that the world will have to repeat the 1st of September 1939, with Russia invading a NATO state, with Article 5 being triggered, with us losing the freedoms we have now in order to fight for our survival. We believe that war is something that should be left in the past, but for order to do so, we need to make sure that it never repeats. We need to make sure that those who believe that they have the right to exercise war on other countries are being taken to court. We need to make sure that rockets do not fly over civilian infrastructure ever again. We need to make sure that peace agreements are there not just for show, but that they actually do something. Russia needs to be stopped for us to be able to move, not only as Ukraine, but Europe, the whole of the West, the whole of the world forward within this evolution of our kind. Stop Russia! Stop the war!
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 The argument I hear very often is that, well, if you're against war, why are you advocating for sending weapons to Ukraine? If you're anti-war, then why are you trying to support a side within a war? Why are you pro fighting off the Russians? Why are you pro being able to continue this havoc? The argument they hear very often is that, well, if you hate war this much, just surrender. Then there will be no war. I don't have to explain that this is stupid. There is a very important thing that we need to remember, all of us. And that very important thing is that peace is not a right that is given to us by itself. In order to stop Russia, in order to stop the war, we need to make sure that it does not happen again. There is no point in finishing a war when finishing a war means that in very soon Russia is going to be able to have bases next to European and NATO countries. There is no point in finishing a war when there is no justice served to the war criminals, when there is no justice served to all the families that have been the victims of the war. There is no point in finishing a war when it just means that it is going to continue again and again. Russia has shown too many times that it will do it again and again. Russia has attacked many countries before Ukraine, including Syria, including Georgia, and they all use the same strategy, which is paradoxically the same strategy that Nazi Germany has been using when it has been trying to annex its next territories in the 30s. It is the argument of, we're just liberating people who speak our language. Never mind the fact that those people speak your language just because you have invaded them for a very long time, that you have indoctrinated their culture, that you have been killing people for advocating the Ukrainian language and Ukrainian rights. The fact that you have been pushing your language in schools and beating up children for speaking Ukrainian. This is a process. Ukraine has shown a lot over the last 2 years and over its existence, that Ukraine is willing to reflect upon its past, that Ukraine is willing to make amends to the problems that it might have as a nation, because no nation is without problems. Ukraine has shown that it is willing to be the free democratic nation within the European Union that it strives to become and that we all want to see it as. If Ukraine wants that, we would need to give it to it. And we would rather fight for the rights of countries and alliances that stand for basic human rights than for the side that kills people just because they belong to a specific ethnic group. Stop Russia! Stop the war!
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 We're going to talk about the weapons that Ukraine needs, and we will explain why Ukraine does need them. Every day, a lot of people die because of Russian rockets. Those Russian rockets are able to reach civilian infrastructure because they are based within areas in Russia and Belarus that are close to the Ukrainian border and have the capacity to reach cities, even in the far west end of Ukraine, within 4.46 minutes. Russia is able to do that because we are allowing it to do that. Russia is doing that because it is a terrorist state that will push boundaries as far as it can whilst pursuing its imperialist ambitions. If we want Russia to stop fighting, and if Russia is not going to stop fighting, we need to do more. More sanctions on Russia!
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 By defeating Russia, we will stop yet another threat to our existence as it is right now. I'll be finishing my speech for today, and I want to thank you all very much for being here. Before I finish with a few words regarding what can you do today to help Ukraine, I would like to hold a minute of silence for all of the victims of the Russian terrorist regime, for all of the people who have not been lucky enough to get to the bomb shelters quick enough, for all of the people that have died in Ukraine just because they are Ukrainian. A minute of silence. Thank you. There is, again, a installation to my right. If I heard correctly, we are able to give away flags after we finish today's rally? Yes, we are. Good. If you would like a Ukrainian flag, please take one with it for you home. If you're able to support Ukraine, we have a tent that is to my right. where there is merchandise sent and when we accept donations that are used for the humanitarian aid within Ukraine. This is, unfortunately, a marathon, not a sprint. Help Ukraine. Everything you do matters. Take care of yourself. We are able to do this. All together, we will win!
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 And again, thank you so much for coming today. Please continue supporting us. Please continue coming here, doing what you can in order to support Ukraine. You're fantastic. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!
Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!
Slava нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Захисникам та захисницям України тричі.
Слава! Слава! Слава!
We will be finishing this rally as per tradition by playing the national anthem of Ukraine. Thank you so much, guys. Дякую.
Слава Україні!
Слава нації! Україна! Україна! Україна!
Понад усе!
Yeah, apologies for a little confusion. We still have about 20 minutes to go. As you all know, we're here 3 times a week on Wednesdays, Fridays and Sundays for 2 hours. I appreciate that it's cold. If it's cold for you, then maybe try and move a bit, but we have sort of 20 minutes more to go. Like I keep saying, I can only imagine how it must be for our defenders now in Ukraine when it's sort of minus temperatures and they have to dig trenches and stay there with mice and no food and those trench candles. I can only imagine how difficult it must be. And on that note, I am encouraging everybody to continue donating to Ukraine. This is particularly important now in the winter months because when it's winter we always need more things. Our defenders need more warm clothes, foot warmers. We've sent, by the way, 120 kilograms yesterday of foot warmers, but that's not enough. They're sort of used once and that's it. They need warm clothes, they need more of those trench candles. Some people who live in the areas where there is no electricity because it's been cut off due to Russian bombings, they also need some heaters, warm clothes, etc. So please continue your donations. Unfortunately, at the beginning of the war, we received millions of donations, worth of donations from people who supported Ukraine. But a lot of people thought, well, I'll donate once and that's it, that's my duty, it's done, it's over. But the war is not over. And we keep experiencing casualties of this war on a daily basis. Russia, every week we receive news of Russia targeting our infrastructure, Russia targeting specifically maternal hospitals, kindergartens, etc. We need to rebuild all that and we need funds. So please continue donating to Ukraine. And I'm going to ask you to just say it out loud. Donate to Ukraine!
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 And obviously I appreciate that not everybody can make donations. We all have different financial circumstances, but there are still so many ways to support Ukraine. Coming to these rallies is one of them. A lot of people ask me particularly, why do you keep coming? Why is it important? I mean, everybody knows that there is war in Ukraine. The world is helping you anyway. Why do you need to come to the rallies? And the answer to that is, well, number one, Russians don't like it. It pisses them off to see our flags in central London, so we want to keep that up. Number two, of course, we want to continue reminding the world of the fact that the war is going on. Yes, the world knows, but the world needs a little bit of a push sometimes to continue sending those weapons, to continue sending that aid. Rishi Sunak, hopefully, sees us every week. We wave at him, we say hello, and so we went to Kiev and he helped Ukraine. I don't know if it's us, I don't know if it's not us. I would like to think that our rallies do help. So please continue coming to these rallies. It's extremely important that the world supports us, that you all come here. If you can come once a week, 2 times a week, 3 times a week, whatever you can. It's important that you spread the word on your social media, that you take pictures, that you tag us, that you tag Support Ukraine, that you remind the world what Ukraine needs. World, support Ukraine!
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 And it's particularly important, like our friend said earlier today, that this year is going to be perhaps a very challenging one as well, because there are so many elections going all over the world. Obviously, Russia is going to choose Putin again, so he's going to continue bombing us. There are going to be elections in the United States and India. There are going to be European elections. So the world's history is in a way changing this year. And what we want is that we want one thing to change in the world, is that Ukraine wins, we get our territories back. That's it, as simple as that. But again, for that, we need to continue pressuring the world. We need to continue showing the political parties around the world that people vote for politicians who support Ukraine, so that the world continues supporting Ukraine. Because Ukraine is protecting currently peace in Europe. Ukrainians are fighting and dying on a daily basis. And we want the world to know that, of course, we appreciate the support that we have been receiving so far, but unfortunately it's not enough. And we need to continue asking for support. We need to continue pressuring international organizations, because some of international organizations, unfortunately, have not done enough. We need to continue pressuring the international society as well, and the international courts and lawyers to bring up action against Russia. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that South Africa has brought now an action in the court. Obviously, there are several trials currently going on in The Hague and in the International Court of Justice against Russia, and we need to continue asking people to step in, to testify as witnesses, to support trial for Russia, to support the fact that Russia needs to be tried for its actions. They need to pay for their war crimes. There needs to be a similar process to the one that happened against the German Nazis when in Nuremberg process they were actually executed eventually. I'm not saying that that's how it should be done in the 21st century, but certainly Russia needs to be punished for its crimes. Trial for Russia!
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 And unlike Russians, we Ukrainians are not a totalitarian state. We do not support what Russia is doing even to their own people who are against the war. We do not support throwing people in jail just for the sake of their political position or otherwise. We are asking for a fair trial against Russia for all the crimes that they have committed, and there are thousands of them now that have been collected since 2014. And I'm sure that one day they will pay for their crimes, and that they will pay restitutions to Ukraine for the rest of their miserable existence. Once again, I'm asking the world to continue supporting Ukraine. I'm going to, because it's the last sort of few minutes, so let's just say it a bit louder. World, support Ukraine!
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 And of course, thank you so much to every one of you who keep coming to these rallies on a weekly basis. We have so many of our friends from different nationalities, different countries, different flags, and it's just such a wonderful sense of unity. to come here and to feel that we do have the world support, that we have our friends who come here and who continue standing with us until we win this war. All together, we will win!
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 Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you to all of our speakers, to every person who comes here to send the Ukrainian message to the whole world. Without this, we will never be heard, my friends. If you remain your life in silence, nobody will ever know your message. And that is why we must not be silent. We must continue to speak so that the whole world knows what's going on, and so that every person on this planet is informed to make a decision based on the information at hand that we have. A decision for their future and for the future of mankind. That is what's up to us, my friends. That is the power we all have, because we live in the free world. The power to keep living in the free world, to maintain the existence of this free world. For if we don't, if we take this power for granted, if we take our freedom for granted, thank you very much, if we take the ability to speak for granted, then we will become part of this enslaved world that Russia envisions. This supposed multipolar world is nothing more but a sham, so that they can have their own personal exterminations of any people who refuse to abide the rules that they create. That is what Russia wants to do, my friends. That is why we must stop them. It's an ingenious idea, truly, to invade a country. And then, when the people who oppose you, when the people who don't want to be genocided by you flee as refugees, and only those who support your genocidal regime stay, when you put your own people in that country, the people who support your genocide, and then you make them vote for you, truly, this is the biggest bastardization of democracy that we have seen throughout history. This is not democracy, my friends. This is racketeering in plain sight. This is racketeering on a country scale, on a world scale. And yet, some misguided individuals still consider the supposed referendums in Crimea, Donbass, and many other regions of Ukraine, where they obviously voted for Russia, obviously, with 110, 115% of the people coming to vote. Funny that, isn't it? How more than the whole population votes to join Russia. Truly magical. We must not forget that Russia cannot be trusted. Let's not forget about that, my friends. Because if we do, if we try to once again try to come to a consensus with Russia, if we try once again to appease Russia, we would be nothing more than fools waiting to be abused by the Russian terrorist regime. We must not do that. When Hitler annexed Austria, because they speak the same language, the world remained silent. When Hitler consolidated his power, when Hitler did the Kristallnacht and attacked the Jewish people who lived in Germany, was there a reaction back then? No. The reaction only came when it was already too late, when he was too big to be stopped painlessly, and millions of people died. Must we really wait for Putin to get bigger? Must we really wait for his alliance with Iran and North Korea to consolidate? For them to be able to prepare, to regroup, to rearm, and to start this great war on their terms? Because we have the possibility of ending it before it even begins. This, my friends, is a global conflict. But it is not yet a world war. The only way to prevent this world war is to make sure that actions such as the actions of the Russian terrorist regime do not go by unpunished. Hitler had struck many times before the rest of the world struck back. That is why he was powerful. That is why he had enough strength to do the damage that he has done. And even now, some people still agree with some of his ideologies. We condemn the terrorist regimes of Russia, Iran, and North Korea, and all of their proxies. Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS, you name it. We condemn all of these terrorist organizations. And we will make sure that the world knows that these individuals are not freedom fighters. There's no such thing as being a butcher for freedom. There's no such thing as being a thief for freedom. There's no such thing as being a rapist for freedom. That is not possible, my friends. Freedom does not need rape. It does not need murder or thievery. Freedom needs to be defended, however. Exactly about this is what our protest is about, my friends. Freedom needs to be defended from the individuals who claim that their atrocities are freedom fighting. No more. We will not be fooled anymore by these world jugglers and apologists and Russophiles who claim that Russia is doing nothing wrong, that Russia is just defending themselves. My friends, let's not forget, NATO and the EU are voluntary organizations. And to join them is a conversation that has been had with Russia also. Russia has had the chance to join with them, to be part of the collective West, of the free world. But of course, Putin did not want any of that. Putin wanted to maintain his iron grip in his own country, no matter the cost. The Russians have a very low quality of life. And by Russians, of course, I mean the people who live outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg. Or as the saying in Russia goes, Moscow and St. Petersburg are not Russia. They are Europe. But why is it that the rest of Russia must suffer because of one man? Why is it that the rest of the world must suffer because of unfounded ambitions and because of pure insanity? His desire to return to the past just so that he can fill up his pockets once again, his and those of his cronies. That is the question that each and every single one of us will have to answer one day, my friends. The time has come that we need to make decisions. We can no longer consider wars in Ukraine or Israel or wherever else as far away things that will never touch us, as these curiosities from the other side of the world that will never be part of our personal life. We can no longer have such ignorant thoughts. That is why, my friends, we must stay united, because arms keep peace, and they are the only way for us to maintain that peace from being taken away by those who wish us harm. Arm Ukraine, protect peace.
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 Fighter jets for Ukraine.
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 Air defense 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 for Ukraine.
More sanctions on Russia.
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 Seize Russian assets!
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 Just a quick correction. Tommy, my friend, this time it's not freeze, it is seize. So it is not off this time. If it were freeze, then indeed. But thank you very much for the interaction too. You know, Tommy is one of our greatest supporters here. He always comes here and he always gives us great support. And today we went over there to show support to the Israeli community that's been a victim of the terrorist group of Hamas. That is what we say for everybody in the world. We oppose terrorism. And everybody in the world must also understand that rape, thievery and butchery are not freedom fighting. All of these things are crimes and violations against freedom. And to call yourself a freedom fighter whilst committing such actions is a violation of that same term, my friends. Let's not forget about that. There's always so much to say, my friends. But unfortunately, our time here comes to an end now. Once again, thank you all very much for coming here today. And I hope to see you again in our next rallies. On Wednesday at 6 o'clock, on Friday at 6 o'clock, and on Sunday at 3 o'clock. And now, my friends, we will end this rally as we always do with the Ukrainian anthem. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Дякую.